Deasa Dorsey, welcome. Welcome to Flocking
How
Together.
you doing, Sarah?
I'm great. I'm great. It's good to see you. I'm glad you took this time. Appreciate you.
Thank you
And
for
I,
having me today.
yeah, you're an old show. When I look at your website, you've got all kinds of interviews. Everyone wants wants a piece of your brain and your heart. It's certain that it sounds like. So I'm glad to have you here. And
I'm here for the excitingness.
nice, nice. We'll bring it today. So first, you are a nurse, a registered nurse. You have businesses that you run. We're going to talk about what you do and then the organizations you lead. And just to weave together the flock, you were introduced to me by Kara Michelle Pearson from Lilac and Indigo. You're also
Beautiful
connected with
soul.
LaShonda. You did work with Danae. So yeah, all
Beautiful
beautiful
soul.
souls, right? Yes.
Yes.
So I feel lucky to have crossed paths and just be sitting here today talking with you. So again, thanks for showing up. And I want to say thanks for the work that you do, but people don't know yet. Maybe some new people are watching this. So tell me a little bit about. I want to start present and then kind of go backwards into the story. But tell us about iCan Health. Tell us about the iCan manual, and yeah, we'll just go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thank you so much, and thank you for all that you do and the ways that you show up and the opportunities that you afford others. I think that's a beautiful gift that you have. So thank you for that.
Thank
Um,
you.
so a little bit about iCan Health. We are going to our fourth year this year, which is pretty awesome. Like you said, I'm a nurse by profession, so business is like kind of
Mhm.
another language sometimes, but it's driven by passion, and
Mhm.
so it's been awesome just to see it flourish. So in 2019, well, actually 2013, and I'll get through the story quickly. I had a idea. I worked with people with chronic comorbidities, COPD, asthma, hypertension, diabetes, and diabetes really stuck out to me because it's one of those things. Diabetes type 2 is self manageable. Like you can do things that
Mhm.
can help manage diabetes, but a lot of people that I ran into, they kind of lacked education surrounding the diagnosis. No fault to them. It's just sometimes that's only certain amount of hours are provided in the educational diabetes education, depending on your health insurance, or especially within like the Black community. There's some myths that kind of stir up in
Mhm.
our community, that kind of, and I'm sure you've worked with people understanding this and how the mental health component, and how if you have a fear perhaps of a diagnosis, it keeps you away
Mm.
sometimes, and doesn't make you want to go toward it and try to figure things out, but it kind of scares you and it kind of pushes you away. And I think that's
Right.
some of the things that I saw happening. And so I heard a lot of people say, I can't eat sugar anymore, I can't do this, I can't
Mm.
do that. And so I wanted to empower people and change their mindset a little bit. So I started drafting the iCan manual, and from there it just kind of grew. And again, this was in 2013.
Wow.
And so I was living in Cincinnati still, but I'm born and raised Cincinnati. I'm Cincinnati through and through. We
Yeah.
should have went to the Super Bowl, but I digress. But so
But we,
college
we can take it
Cincinnati.
there later, but yeah.
Went to college in Cincinnati, and so I'm like, this got to be more than just Cincinnati. So I decided to
Mm.
pack up my car and do some travel nursing. I literally drove
Wow.
to the around the United States everywhere I went. Lived in like Texas and California and North Carolina, and just awesome different things. I began hiking. I'm like, who do I think I
Oh.
am? And just did
Yeah.
some exploration and finding more of myself during that time, which is another story. But all the while I was drafting the iCan manual. So I
Yeah.
finished it a couple years later. It took me years just because it was a focus, but not so much. And then I finally, like, I just remember the moment when I went to a printer, found a printer
Mm.
to print the first copy, and I laid it in my hands, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is
Wow.
it. So The iCan manual is, I actually got a
Oh
copy
yeah,
here.
cool.
It's
Okay, great.
less than 40 pages. It's
Okay.
colorful, it's interactive. It could be used in various different settings, and basically it's just to kind of give people an understanding of some of the terms they'll be hearing and using, perhaps like A1C, or get them familiar with the idea of insulin, even though everybody doesn't have to take insulin, but it can be a scary thing to prick yourself, or
Mm-hmm.
just kind of that mental health piece, like how are we managing stress,
Yeah.
because that plays a role on diabetes as well. So it's for people with pre-diabetes and diabetes type 2. But yeah, that's kind of in summation, the
Whew.
start and where we are.
Yeah. Well, so I've many post-it notes around now after you sharing, but help me understand why. I mean, I'm hearing you why you kind of entered into diabetes, but is that now your focus that you really are trying to, like, spreading awareness? You say awareness, education, and also accountability. So I'm curious, besides the teaching and the awareness, how do you hold or help people feel the accountability and the support? And why is that the lane? Or have you branched outside of that lane after the work with the manual?
Yeah, so um focused right now, yeah, we are focused on pre-diabetes and diabetes type 2, again, because it's just diabetes type 1 is not something that you can, it's, unfortunately, you can't cure that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something, well, they are making some advancements, so I will say that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not one of those things that you can do a whole lot to change,
Mm.
what's happening. So,
Okay.
but diabetes type 2, there are some factors that we can, I've heard of people that were taking a particular drug at a time, and then they were able to scale back on the amount, they were able to scale back and come off of the medication.
Mm.
So, I mean, we have ways that we can manage diabetes a bit better. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
we're focused on that. I don't know if you were aware, like during like COVID and the height of COVID, it was like diabetes became really,
Mm.
obvious. It's more obvious to medical providers, and how many people. I mean, it affects like what, 30. I think, don't quote me, but I want to say like
Yeah.
37, some
Mm.
wild millions number, that I should
Wow,
absolutely
yeah,
know. 34
yeah,
million in the country, in
yeah.
the US. So it's pretty prevalent. Um, um, Condition, as well as it is beginning to affect our children, adolescents,
Mhm,
at a higher rate. We didn't see that before. We saw a lot of kids before that had diabetes type 1, because it can happen when you're, younger.
mhm,
But diabetes type 2, we didn't see that a whole bunch. But now, due to various things, various reasons, we're seeing kids with it too. So
mhm,
yeah, it's we're tackling that now.
mhm.
But we are a holistic health and wellness organization. So
Mm,
we come at it from different ways, and even had the opportunity, like the one I was talking about, the opportunities that you afford people.
mm,
We were able to go do nutrition classes, with sixth graders. So,
mhm,
we're not, and we've done healthy heart conversations, and
mm.
we even did yoga just to calm the
Yeah,
nervous, calm the body down.
nice,
So yeah, we're open to
yeah,
many different things, but currently we're focused on diabetes.
yeah. What's your favorite age range to work with? And it's kind of a leading question. I know in my work, if we, I see a lot of folks who are, youth or older, older adults or juveniles, and there's this missing piece. If we could have gotten there earlier, if we could have gotten there in the early age to talk about trauma and resilience, we could have seen some shifts. But do you have a particular age that you'd like to pour into, or are you really just excited to any audience where you can spread the word?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think naturally, the younger crowd, they're a little bit more open to change.
Mm,
Um, and so that makes things a bit easier, and they're a little bit more impressionable.
mhm,
Um, but then I have my more mature crowd. I'm
mhm.
careful with the way I say that.
Yeah, I was bumbling around that. Yeah, you got it better.
Uh, just because people are pretty set in their ways at times. But for some reason that doesn't bother me, because I also like to make sure people realize that they are accountable for themselves, and I can't make anybody do anything. And that is a struggle even as a nurse in general, because you
Yeah.
sometimes see people doing things like, oh, that's not going to help you. But then I've had
Mhm.
to remind myself that we're all on our own journey
Mm.
of many things,
Wow.
self-actualization and higher consciousness and all the things. And so some of the things I have to remember that
Yeah.
you know, we're going through this process because this is the way that we need to go through it, and that's a
Mm, mm,
hard
mm.
pill to swallow sometimes, but
Mhm,
I would want
mhm.
somebody to give me the freedom to be able to choose. And then, but
Nice.
to be even more specific on your question, which kind of deviates, when I lived in North Carolina, I worked on a floor with a geriatric unit.
Mm,
And people on that floor had there was some behavioral health, but there was like some Alzheimer's, some
mm.
dementia, and those adults have a special place in my heart. I absolutely
Wow.
love my older adults that,
Yeah.
maybe having some dementia or
Mhm.
other conditions like that. So those are
Mm.
I call them my babies.
Ah, beautiful. I love that. Well, and so I heard you say it there's freedom and choice. And I imagine there's freedom and accountability, right? I forget who said it, but when if a river had no banks, the water would just flow everywhere, right? So there's importance in structure, there's importance in those banks. But even your motto, you can, we can, remind yourself that I can. So where did that come
Mhm.
from for you to like really anchor back to the self, like this notion of self empowerment? We know healing happens in community, in relationship. You mentioned stigma and fear earlier. So when we feel isolated, right, we don't feel motivated sometimes, but you do bring it back to the self. How do you develop that self, or where did that come from? If you take us back to the first memory you have of centering the self and that work, what is that for you?
Ooh.
I asked kind of nine questions
Um,
at the same time, but you take that.
No, that's a good question. I think that's something I even would want to sit with
Mm,
within myself. I think that boy, how do I answer that one? Um yeah, so like I was kind of saying, I think that healthcare in general in this country has been difficult sometimes to navigate for
mm,
people that have been um um underserved in certain ways. And so one of the things I like to make sure people have, and the manual speaks of this too, is yes, you have your self accountability, um, and you have your what we call the clinical dream team, and we have your non-clinical dream team.
mm,
And
mm,
so I'll start with the dream team part first, because I believe that uh, I personally, even as a nurse, I if I can help it, I don't go to even my own doctor's appointments alone. And
oh,
that's
wow.
not, that's because sometimes when you go to the appointment, they could tell me I had any diagnosis, strep throat or something, and I'm freaking out. You miss the
Mhm.
terms, you miss sometimes what's being said to you. You may not understand, you may have questions that you forget. And there's sometimes a little bit of fear surrounding going to the doctor.
Mhm.
And so I encourage people to always have an advocate with them. Maybe somebody that'll just take notes, maybe somebody that'll remind them, hey, don't forget you wanted to know X, Y, and Z. So I think a team is absolutely valuable and necessary. But before you can even get to the team, you've got to do some self work.
Mhm.
And just, sometimes I'm noticing people are kind of even in denial of what's
Mm.
happening, to the point where unfortunately we get to the level of complications, and I'm talking in general, not just
Mm.
diabetes, but in general.
Mhm.
But you know giving somebody support and letting them know that you may not be here at this place of acceptance, but when you get there, I'm here. And that's one of the things I wanted to provide to my patients, was when you get there, please know you
Mm.
can come to my office, we can meet, we can talk, I'll meet you where you are. But you have
Yeah.
to let people know that it's in their timing once again. And
Mhm.
I noticed that some of us as medical professionals, like we have this knowledge and we have this, like
Mm.
we know, and But honestly, nobody knows your body better than you do. And I'm not saying don't go to doctor. I'm not
Yeah.
saying don't listen to, the advice and all of that. But I
Yeah.
am saying also listen to yourself. And I think that's a
Yeah.
developed thing. You have to develop
Mm-hmm.
that, that going in and listening to yourself, which then will help you be more accountable to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Hope that kind of answered
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, and it's beautiful. A couple of things are sticking out. To be a partner in your own health, in your own healthcare, like you said, starts with that self-awareness, and to partner with yourself, to listen to your body, right? So often, and
Yeah.
of course, we talk about in the trauma field, we are, or just in, like, I think just attachment styles and those early childhood experiences. Sometimes we have experiences where we're encouraged to disconnect from our bodies, to not listen to
Mhm.
that grumbly stomach, not listen to that broken heart, because we need to please someone else.
Mhm.
We need to be someone for someone else. We have to survive, right? So I think that the disconnection that's perpetuated is so early and so often, that what you're bringing to our awareness is a pretty radical act of coming back home to ourselves. And not because it's aspirational, but because very specifically it will help us partner in our health, in our education, in our work world, right? When we have that deeper relationship with the self. And I think
Which
something, a
then
gift
will
that, well, go,
produce,
yeah. Yeah, no, no,
I was
yeah.
just gonna say, which I then will produce better outcomes
Yeah.
and more adherence, because it's
Mhm.
something that you want to do, and it's not because
Mhm.
when everybody else leaves, you're stuck with that piece of cake that's right in front of you, and you have to
Mhm.
decide, is it what I want to eat? And I'm not gonna tell you can't eat it, but maybe we take a slither instead of the
Mhm.
entire cake at that time. And so you have to be, when everybody else leaves, you are with you.
Yes. Well, and that's what I was going to say. I think you provide the bridge. I think that's a gift that you have. You said, "I'm going to stay with you on the journey, no matter what. I'm not going to force." It sounds like, and I'm sure it's a challenge. I'm not going to be angry or blame and shame if you don't come over here to this side, But I'm going to be
Mhm.
there with you, so when you are ready, you have an ally. And I think that's so important, right? When we feel alone in our
Yeah.
pain, when we feel isolated, that actually just drives us unconsciously to do things that are maybe unsafe for our brains and bodies, right? So to know that you're going to have my back, you're not going to judge me, you're not going to force me, but you're going to be there when I'm ready. I'm sure that's such a gift to everyone that you work with, patients, folks who even are connected with iCan, like, real gift.
And you said two words that I think are unfortunately kind of very much present, shame and guilt. And
Yeah.
you don't want to shame or guilt people into,
Mm-hmm.
because and then when you look at holistically, when you look at a person, because a person is where they are for many different reasons,
Mm-hmm.
you realize that some of this ain't even their fault. it's
Yeah.
it's just, you know
Yes.
it's just, and some of it is undealt with things that people don't
Yes.
even have language for or have an understanding
Mm-hmm.
of. And so you kind of, it produces this
Mm-hmm.
level of empathy, I think, where you don't want to
Mm-hmm.
shame or guilt somebody, but you want to,
Yeah.
be there in ways
Yeah.
that you can.
Absolutely. Well, that's what the ACE study really helped us on a popular scale understand, right? The adverse childhood experience study, that if you are
Mm.
exposed to adverse experiences in childhood, abuse, neglect, uh, um, uh, divorce, parent in and out of the prison system, if you community violence, all these things, if you're exposed to that, it can have a direct adverse health outcome in adulthood. Higher rates of diabetes, emphysema, asthma, right? People who never even picked up a cigarette will have lung disease issues because of how those adverse childhood experiences impact our brain and body. So I love that you're
Absolutely.
naming that people, we all feel like things are our fault, even though we have intergenerational trauma, we have unhealed and unresolved
Mhm.
experiences, we're unseen and unheard, and that can drive health outcomes. And to be given the message over and over that you're okay just the way you are, that you can. I mean, I literally, your slogan, like, that is so healing, and that will actually drive us to want to take better care, want to reach out, want to get more support. So,
It's literally a mind shift.
yeah.
The society that we're born into, unfortunately, I don't think always reminds you of those things.
Hmm.
If you
Hmm.
watch any news, if you listen to any reports, you're
Hmm.
hearing the opposite, unfortunately, sometimes.
Hmm.
So, and then like, and you are obviously very much aware of how you hold trauma inside your body, and you're right, the manifestations of it are many things. So yeah.
Okay, so we're lifting shame and blame, we're supporting people, we're educating our young folks, and we're loving on our wise ones, right? But you
Wise.
also yeah, our wise, thank you, you planted that seed. You
That's an
also
awesome word.
organize the yeah, but we're gonna borrow it. I'm gonna borrow from you. You also organize, and I don't want to use the wrong terminology, run or operate the Black Nurse Network. Tell us about that. How'd you get started with that, and where can people even find you to connect with that network?
Yeah. So excuse me. Um, like I said, I'm a graduate of the University of Cincinnati College of Nursing, and I was one of very few Black students, and the experience is just different when you're not the majority. And I went away, like I said, but I came back as an alumni, and I was involved in some of their diversity and inclusive initiatives. And I started to get, even more invested in the students. And I realized that unfortunately some of the same experiences that I was having, we won't say how many years ago, but when I was a student, they're still happening. And so they're having some of the same experiences. And I'm like, that's not, to me, like we're not doing something right if they're having some of the same experiences. And so I've become more and more invested in, like I said, just the student experience and amplifying the student voice, and basically ensuring that Black nursing students, which is our goal, graduate from nursing programs in Cincinnati and basically in the US. I want to say somewhere between 75 to 80% of the nurses are white nurses. And of course, the nursing field is dominated by women. So, but even in Cincinnati, and especially where the school is and where the main hospital is, it's in an urban area, and the representation, the nurses don't always look like the patients. And we know that you improve health outcomes, of course, when there's representation and when people that you're working with look like you. And so again, one of our goals, our main goal, is to produce more, or to support rather, more Black nurses. So we do this by way of, we do mentoring. So we pair students with professional nurses that are in the community, and they are able to build a relationship for the academic school year. We do outings, like for instance, for this month, for Black History Month, we'll be going down to the Underground Railroad Freedom Center and just hanging out, and letting the students see each other and get to know each other. We do, if we can, support financially, because nursing school not only is very hard, but it's expensive. So if there's students that need some financial support, we're getting to a place where we're able to contribute to their needs in that way. But we do events, and we do mental health pieces, because college in general is just difficult, and students are going through a lot of different things. So yeah, we're just there to support them, to if they need something. I mean, for finals week, we just took in donuts and juice and just rented out a room, and them come in and hang out and study and all those different things. So that's pretty much what we do with Black Nurse Network.
Beautiful. I'm like writing down these adjectives to describe you, right? You're a leader, you're an advocate, you're an organizer, you're a gatherer. I don't know if that's a word. You're an author, you're a trainer. Take me back to little baby Deasa. Take me back to your childhood. Where did this come from? Where is that root for you? Because what I'm seeing is you see a need and you fill it. I don't hear you saying, well, somebody else should or they should. Yeah. And I'm sure you have that part, but you see a need and you fill it. So help me understand where that came from, or what would you point to in your past that really drives you?
You trying to turn this into a therapy session
Yep,
today?
yep.
Oh man.
I'm just fascinated, really.
You're awesome with the questions and the way you just pull things together. Childhood me would and I'm still this person. I'm like pretty silly and just kind of goofy and chill. But I've always also been like a for lack of better terms, I just thought I was a CEO. And
Yeah,
for
nice.
whatever reason, I just thought,
That's awesome.
and I was the only child for like
Yes.
10 years. I'm sure that didn't help. I'm the first grandkid. I'm sure that didn't help. And so it just I don't know.
Yes.
But I will say this, two things. One, when I was younger, my cousins and I was not the oldest. Um, we had a company, I guess. It was called
Mhm.
Cousins Club, Cuzins.
I
And
love
guess
it.
who the president was? And we were just there to I don't even know what our overall goal was. I think just to make money during the summer. So I've always had
Uh-huh.
this piece of like starter
Yes.
leader, I think, in me.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm my mother's, like I said, first child. And when she had me, she was still in college. So I kind of grew up with like her friends and hanging out on
Mhm.
campus, and like there was a bowling
Mhm.
alley on campus, and I just thought I was really doing something back then when I was a
Mhm.
kid hanging out in college and my mother.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think I was a bit more mature, or at least I felt older than I actually
Mhm.
was, and I think that kind of plays a part. But yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
noticed that if I see a problem, I like to fix it,
Mhm.
but I have to make sure there's balance in that because I can't fix
Yeah.
everything. And
Yeah. Yeah.
um, you know, there's a ton of work that goes into making sure that, at the end of the day, like I'm just okay with who I am. And if I can't fix something,
Mhm.
that's okay. And that's not always my responsibility. So just owning things
Mhm.
that, making sure I'm not owning things that I don't need to. But
Mhm.
wherever life leads me, just kind of going with the flow.
Mhm. I have 1,000 more questions. I'm gonna leave it here though. We'll get a beer sometime. Deasa, you're a real gift. I really appreciate not only you sharing, but just illuminating all the different ways that people can connect with you with iCan, with the Black Nurse Network. Of course, we'll link to all your stuff in our newsletter. But thank you. Thanks for bringing your gifts to the world and being that CEO. I feel like I want to learn from you, even in that in many realms, but in that one especially. But yeah,
That's so
thank you for
funny.
shining bright. Yeah.
No problem. Thank you. Like I said, thank you just for the opportunity and for having me on here today. I appreciate it. And thank you for
Awesome.
everything that you're doing. I learn from you. I love your newsletters.
Oh,
And I appreciate even you're in conversations that you may not be present at. So I just
ah.
want to say for, what you're doing with everything.
Well, thank you. I'm blushing. The admiration is mutual, and we'll see you out there. We'll see you in the flop.
All righty.
See
Take
ya.
care.